Hello girls and ghouls, it's Dom. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different, and a lot of the content that I have made has focused on things that I own or things that I've been doing, and I wanted to try something a little bit different today and talk to you guys about some of the entertainment and content that I love, that specifically being Gothic horror. I have loved all things creepy and macabre since I was a child, really. My mom and I used to watch a lot of horror movies when my dad was away on business trips. Like, we would watch Dracula and other vampire films. And I think once my cousins accidentally showed me Scream when I was about 5, which was endlessly traumatizing, I will say. But it did definitely shape who I am as a person and my interests now. As I got older and I consumed more horror, I found that for me, I was much more interested in things that really lingered in your mind as being scary and creepy and not so much jump scares. I really loved the films and movies and TV shows that were tragic, romantic, and kind of hauntingly beautiful. I think this is kind of interesting for me because I do find that a lot of what I'm interested in style-wise tends to lean more dark romantic, and that's definitely bled into the type of content I like to consume. In a way, it's a type of horror to me that feels very elegant. From the details in the costuming, to who they've selected in the casting, to the small, minute things in the stories themselves, it almost all carries through this undertone of beautiful creepiness. And do not get me wrong, I love a good slasher, which I think is a video for another day altogether. But today we're gonna talk about my top 5 favorite Gothic horror films. So grab a drink, grab a spooky snack. This might be a long one. I feel like I can't really dive into my top 5 favorite Gothic horror films without talking about what Gothic horror is. Gothic horror has some pretty storied roots. It goes back to the late 1700s with literature that really blurred the lines between fear, romance, death, and decay. The very first Gothic novel written was in 1764 by Horace Walpole, and it is The Castle of Otranto. It really gave us a good blueprint for the Gothic horror genre. We've got creepy castles, ancient family curses, and in some way the ghosts of the past relating to the people of the present. Then of course we had Frankenstein, Dracula, my personal favorite, The Picture of Dorian Gray, tales of obsession, forbidden knowledge, and the monsters that we create not only externally but inside of ourselves. Side note, I am dying for a modern rendition of The Picture of Dorian Gray. It is one of my favorite novels to discuss with people, and while I absolutely loved how they portrayed it in Penny Dreadful, I'm just dying for someone like Guillermo del Toro. Someone, please give me a modern day retelling of Picture of Dorian Gray. And Gothic horror really emerged during a time of great change, right? That being the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment really focused a lot on reason, but Gothic horror is really rooted in emotion. It almost can be seen as a rebellion against the logic of the time, celebrating mystery, passion, and of course, death and decay. Now, when cinema actually arrived, it was the perfect medium for this type of storytelling. I would argue that there's nothing like creating imagery from Gothic novels in your own mind, but since this is a video about movies, what can I say? And we can look at early silent films like, of course, Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari really as examples of Gothic imagery turned into moving art. I specifically love the use of lighting and shadow in these early films, and we see those really carried throughout the genre into the future. So in terms of a few elements that really define Gothic horror, one of course being atmosphere, and that's a big place where we see them using light and shadow as a plot device. We've also got themes of obsession, repression, death, beauty, decay, forbidden romance. But with all of that, this actual setting of the films are fairly important as well too. You might have a creepy island, an isolated manor, a crumbling castle. I find that Gothic horror often seduces rather than shocks you, and I think that there is a certain art in that. It's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of movies like The Terrifier. I can appreciate the talent and time that goes into practical effects, but there's something about seeing all the details in Gothic horror that really just speaks to me. And oftentimes in Gothic horror, the real terror isn't the monster or the ghost, it's what that thing represents. I feel like it inspires a deeper discussion, and that's what I love about it. Okay, now that I've yapped at you for like 5 minutes straight already, let's jump into my top 5 favorite Gothic horror films. I do want to caveat that these are not in any particular order. These are just my top 5 favorites. I also tried to maybe skip over ones that are super popular like Nosferatu or Crimson Peak. So I'm hoping that there are maybe some on this list that you haven't heard of or haven't seen and you're inspired to go watch them yourself. I am, however, going to start with a very commonly known film, and that is 1999's Sleepy Hollow, directed by none other than Tim Burton. If you didn't know, Sleepy Hollow is a reimagining of the 1820 Washington Irving legend of the Headless Horseman. We've got Johnny Depp playing Ichabod Crane, who is a New York constable sent to the rural village of Sleepy Hollow in upstate New York, and he's there to investigate a series of brutal beheadings. The townsfolk, of course, claim that the killer is a ghost, the so-named Headless Horseman, and Ichabod, a man of science, of course, is ever determined to prove through reason that there is a rational explanation. I love Sleepy Hollow as an example of Gothic horror in this case because I feel like it really puts up logic and reason against fear and uncertainty and supernatural elements. Sleepy Hollow truly captivates, for me, Gothic horror in every single frame. And in fact, at the beginning of the film, I always kind of forget that it's New York until they mention it because it does give such an old English vibe. The casting in this film, to me, is absolute perfection. Johnny Depp is this nervous intellectual who has his own problems. And then, of course, we've got Christina Ricci as Katharina Van Tassel, who looks like she stepped out of a Raphaelite painting. It's very interesting to me to see her blonde with brown eyes. I don't think that that is a vision that we come across in as many films. And of course, we have Miranda Richardson, Christopher Walken, and Michael Gambon. When I was watching this recently, I really had the thought to myself, like, what are we gonna do in the future when we don't have actors who have like imperfect teeth? That was something that really stuck out to me when I was watching this, was that these English actors, in many cases, don't have perfect teeth, and it lends so perfectly to these period films. And I do fear that at some point in the future, we are gonna lose the ability to create period films in the way that we have in Gothic horror like this, because everybody's gonna have perfect veneer teeth and Instagram face. Anyway, the cast to me really feels timeless, almost like we're just peeking into this fog-drenched world where they've always lived. And I would be completely remiss if I didn't mention the costuming by Colleen Atwood. I actually have my eye on a dress from La Femme Noire because they do have a Sleepy Hollow collection that is just chef's kiss. Every texture of the costuming in this film just feels so deliberate, from the lace to the velvet, the high colors, and like the layering of the corsetry. It perfectly blends romanticism with menace. And we've got things like blood red accents amid these pale gray palettes. The Sleepy Hollow world feels just entirely handcrafted by Tim Burton in this film. It almost feels alive. And what I love about this movie is that it doesn't just rely on terror, it's really completely drenched in the atmosphere. The fog itself almost feels like it could be another character in the story. The sound of hooves outside of these homes, it's just really built into this sense of anticipation. I find Sleepy Hollow to be a Gothic horror film at its most romantic. We've got tragedy, we've got superstition, we've got beauty, we've got romance, all bound together by blood and candlelight. Lots of blood. And it's the kind of film that makes me want to live forever in October and also plan a trip to upstate New York. Next on my list is A Cure for Wellness, 2016, directed by Gore Verbinski. This movie follows a young executive played by Dane DeHaan, which I haven't seen in anything recently. I need to kind of see what he's up to because I love him as an actor. And he's sent to this mysterious wellness spa high in the mountains to retrieve the CEO of his company. When he arrives, this spa seems almost too perfect, and the patients there spend their days drinking bottles of mineral water to hopefully cure all of their ailments. Lockhart quickly discovers that no one actually ever leaves this spa. The treatments are strange, and the doctors and staff are even stranger. And beneath the pristine surface of wellness lies something completely corrupted. This movie reminded me a lot of Shutter Island in a way, which I think is more film noir than Gothic horror, to be honest with you, because as he discovers deeper things in his search for his CEO, he starts to lose his own grip on reality, finding himself trapped in a place where youth and death are one and the same. This movie is like a slow, hypnotic descent into madness, and I love it. It's a story about purity, control, and I even think there's a little bit of incest, which is a little, ugh. To me, this film feels like a fever dream in the best possible way. Every frame feels beautiful but suffocating at the same time, which I think is the core of what Gothic horror should be. Gore Verbinski takes this cold and clinical aesthetic of a spa and of wellness and turns it into something very sinister. The castle that the spa is set in is sterile while also decaying at the same time. And I find Dane DeHaan to be the perfect modern Gothic protagonist. He's ambitious, he's skeptical, but he's also slowly unraveling. And Jason Isaacs as Dr. Vollmer embodies that classic Gothic villainy. He's charming, he's intelligent, but underneath all of that, he's extremely monstrous. We also have Mia Goth, who was only 21 when this film was made, and this was her first real jump from modeling to acting, and I have to say I have been a fan ever since. Mia Goth, playing the character Hannah, also really portrays the monstrous nature of girlhood and womanhood in this, and that all links back to the theme of purity with something rotten underneath. Again, the costuming in this film just adds so much to the atmosphere. The crisp white uniforms, the tailored robes, it gives you a sense of luxury that slowly descends into confinement in a way. This film also does a beautiful job of playing with time. You never quite know what era you're in, and while it feels modern, it's also haunted by the past. It almost feels like the spa in this film exists outside of reality. I think Verbinski really captures Gothic horror in this film by showing us what lies beneath the surface, the way beauty can also disguise decay. It's indulgent, slow, while also being meticulous. But to me, that's what really made this film feel hypnotic. Then we have a film about monsters, directed by a monster, and that is The Ninth Gate from 1999, directed by Roman Polanski. This is my second Johnny Depp film on the list. I will not hear any complaints about it. The Ninth Gate follows Dean Corso, who is a rare book collector played by Johnny Depp, and he's hired by a wealthy collector to authenticate a very rare copy of a book. That book being the legendary 17th century text, The Nine Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows. Now, the book is said to summon the devil himself. Don't threaten me with a good time. But that is only possible to do if the correct engravings in the book are combined. Corso's search takes him all across Europe to a bunch of different locations so that he can compare copies of the book to find out what is real and what is not. Again, we see themes of a professional goal turning into a slow devolvement of madness. There are a lot of themes of temptation in this film as well. And the deeper that Corso dives into this mystery of authenticating this book, the more that he realizes that the line between scholar and sinner is dangerously thin. I find that The Ninth Gate is really Gothic horror stripped of a lot of theatrics. It's quite cerebral, and it's one of those films that's either super quiet or super loud when you're watching it, but it's just so beautifully sinister. I find that Johnny Depp's performance in The Ninth Gate is fairly restrained. He acts the part of a cynic, definitely not a hero of any type. And he moves throughout the course of the plot with this cigarette-stained indifference. He is the perfect incarnation of the Gothic anti-hero. He's intelligent, but he's also incredibly morally ambiguous and completely seduced by things that he should fear. There are many times where you're yelling at the screen in this film. And I do find that the other casting in the film really enhance the atmosphere of Gothic horror. We've got Lena Olin, Frank Langella, and Emmanuel Senior. Their performances again are elegant while also being incredibly unsettling. Almost like they all know something that Corso doesn't, which maybe they do. The costuming in this film is understated but also deliberate. A lot of Johnny Depp's character's costuming is incredibly academic, long coats, suits, whereas the women in the film are often draped in black or jewel tones. And those costumes tend to feel timeless, simultaneously feeling sensual but also spectral. Now, I don't want to give Roman Polanski too much props for this, given what we know about him now, but the muted color palette of the film, the heavy use of shadow, and the old European interiors really give you a world that feels weighted down by both history and sin. It's a world where knowledge feels dangerous. What I love about this movie is that it never rushes to explain itself. There's a lot of ambiguity that makes you never sure if the supernatural is real or not, or if the true evil lies in human ambition. I feel like the restraint in this film is what makes it so effectively Gothic. The Ninth Gate's a story about curiosity and corruption, and about the pursuit of truth. Next up, we have Perfume, The Story of a Murderer, directed by Tykwer in 2006. This is a film that I don't think most people have seen, or if they have, they don't talk about it enough. It's also a book. I personally read the book first before watching the film and completely fell in love with it. So it's set in 18th century France, and our main character is Jean-Baptiste Grenouille. He's a man born into poverty, but he's blessed with this incredible sense of smell. Played by Ben Whishaw, Grenouille becomes obsessed with creating the perfect perfume, one that's so beautiful that it can capture the essence of life itself. And as you can imagine, that process includes a lot of death. He has an apprenticeship under a once great perfumer, played by Dustin Hoffman, and this ignites his obsession even further. He soon discovers that the scent of true beauty can only be extracted, of course, from women. And with that, his process turns a little bit murderous, and we see beauty, desire, and death all intertwine. In my mind, Perfume is one of the most visually decadent Gothic films ever made. Ben Wishaw's performance is nothing short of haunting. He plays Grenouille with some sort of like fragile detachment in a way. A man completely alien to human emotion, but possessed by a divine obsession. He's tragic, monstrous, fascinating, and you can't help but root for him all at the same time. The supporting cast is also phenomenal. Dustin Hoffman and Alan Rickman really make this film for me, and they ground the story with a sense of world wariness as well as moral weight that Grenouille does not have. And they remind you that even genius is meaningless without empathy. I also found the costuming and production design of this film completely breathtaking. The dirt and grime of 18th century France clash against the opulence of silk gowns and of course powdered wigs. It really speaks to the duality of ugliness and beauty that defines Gothic horror. Everything is ornate while also rotting, luxurious and contaminated. For a film about perfume, the cinematography really captures scent through imagery. There's a lot of use of smoke curling like perfume through the air, color palettes shifting from muted gray to sensual golds and reds as Grenouille's obsession deepens. I feel like it's very rare for a film to be able to make you feel a smell, but this one does. And what makes this film so haunting is not just the murder of it all, it's the yearning beneath them, because Grenouille isn't driven by lust or greed, but by the need to possess beauty physically, to bottle something that is transcendent. And I feel like that is what makes this film so quintessentially Gothic. It's a story about love twisted by obsession, about the divine being turned profane. The monster, Grenouille, isn't evil by his nature. He's just consumed by this longing for perfection. Perfume reminds us that when beauty is worshipped too deeply, it can destroy everything that it touches, including the one who seeks it most. And I use the term consume very specifically if you have seen this film. And last but not least, we have a film I watched when I was really young, and that is The Skeleton Key from 2005, directed by Iain Softley. This was one of those films that I watched on Cinemax or something. It was one of those things that I forced my friends to watch with me who were not at all into horror, purely because I was like, oh, we haven't seen this, and I would love to traumatize you just a little bit, which I often did to my friends as a teenager. I think I was 11 when this film came out, but I don't think I watched it till I was 12 or 13. The Skeleton Key follows Caroline, a hospice nurse, to a new job in the Louisiana Bayou. Caroline is also played by Kate Hudson, which I thought was a very interesting casting decision. She's there to care for an elderly man who's been left mute and paralyzed after a debilitating stroke. Something about the house that they're in, however, just feels wrong. There are rooms that are completely sealed off. When Caroline begins exploring, as all nosy white women tend to do, she uncovers a history of hoodoo magic, betrayal, and possession that runs deep in the blood of the house. She spends time trying to separate superstition from reality, and she discovers that in this world that she's entered, belief isn't just powerful, it's really everything. The truth that waits at the end of this story is more sinister than Caroline could have ever imagined. I find The Skeleton Key to be Southern Gothic horror at its finest. It's humid, it's hypnotic, and it's steeped in this Southern creepy atmosphere, the kind that just seeps into you like only heat in the South can do. My fellow people who live in the South, you know what I'm talking about. It's October and it's still 90 degrees outside. I find that the performance by Kate Hudson here is one of her best, and it's completely understated. She starts out as pragmatic and skeptical, someone who, like a lot of the other characters in the movies we've talked about, believes that every problem has a completely logical explanation. There's this pure Gothic tension to watching her unravel underneath the weight of historical trauma and pain. The supporting cast gives us Gina Rowlands and John Hurt, and the production design here creates a rich, lived-in world. This plantation house has like a fading grandeur about it. You've got peeling wallpaper, flickering chandeliers, weathered furniture, and every inch of the space in this film feels haunted by time and memory. What I love most about this film is how it treats belief itself as its own form of power. And in most horror films, skepticism is safety, but here it's really what makes Caroline most vulnerable. I think that the way the film flips that dynamic is incredibly clever. And the ending of this is one of the most perfect Gothic endings I've ever experienced. Tragic, it's romantic, while also being incredibly sinister. To me, The Skeleton Key is really the essence of Southern Gothic horror. And there we have it, my top 5 favorite Gothic horror films. I love these because they're not about jump scares or monsters or gore. They're about the monstrous nature that is often wrapped in human condition. In darkness, in all of these films, there's also elegance. I would love to know if any of these are in your top 5 favorite Gothic horror films, and if you have seen these, what did you think? Did I miss anything? Are there any underrated Gothic horror films that I should add to my watch list, as it is spooky season? And if you guys have any recommendations for the videos you guys want to see from me next, please leave a comment below. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers. I don't know how that happened. It's absolutely insane. So thank you all for being here, and I'm excited to make more content. Thank you for watching.